What's going on, guys, and welcome to today's video. And today we are doing our first cutting on the new JL here in the garage today. Now what we're doing is going to be kind of killing two birds with one stone today. What the issue we are taking care of is the fact that this Jeep was optioned with the steel bumper and winch group, and when you option the winch option on your Rubicon, you unfortunately get some very large, ridiculous front impact crash cans on the Jeep. Since the winch does stick forward of the face of the bumper, the per DOT, per crash test ratings, this front crash can has to be extended X amount of inches in front of the very frontmost part of the vehicle. So to legally produce them and sell them in 50 states, they have to add an extension. And unfortunately, it looks kind of ridiculous. Let me grab the new and old pieces. So what we're going to be doing today is basically showing you how to change your winch bumper ridiculous impact cans and knock them down to a normal Rubicon metal bumper piece. If this wasn't a winch bumper group vehicle, it would have the normal trim pieces, which are fog light bezels, and the crush cam. So guys, we're going to need a couple of parts for this thing. You are going to need a left and right non-winch bumper fog light bezel. Now I will have the part numbers down in the description, so if you are doing this mod on your factory equipped winch Rubicon, you'll be able to order the correct parts. Just for comparison's sake, here is the larger impact bumper trim versus what a Rubicon is supposed to have. So you can see how much more ridiculous that is. Now, as you guys can also see, I do have the metal end cap pulled off for the stubby bumper look. I personally like the look of a stubby bumper versus a full width bumper. So again, it's convenient for me to do that right now with pulling off those end caps, so I can then modify the bumper crush can. So let me show you the tools we've got. Let me show you kind of our already before and after, and then we'll go through the process of actually doing it. And it unfortunately does require cutting. Okay guys, so here you can see a much better look at how ridiculous the front bumper impact crush cans are here on a winch bumper Jeep. This side is already finished and done with the half distance crush cans there and the normal metal bumper fog light trim. So that's what we're doing versus what it came with here. All right guys, so here is some of our tools and parts that we need. Like I said, we've got a left and right fog light bezel that we are going to need to reinstall. Here is our other side that we've pulled the end cap off. Here is what we are actually cutting off the front of the Jeep, is that extended can that goes behind that large piece of trim. We've got a ratchet here with a T45 torque, so we can go ahead and get our end caps off. We've got a plastic rivet tool. That is what is used to hold on our trim pieces here. We've got two holes where those go in, and a cutting tool of some sort. I happen to have a 4-inch grinder / cutoff wheel. A Sawzall might do the job. You're just going to be needing to be very careful as you are cutting, not to get into the bumper area. Last but not least, some sort of spray paint so you can paint the area that is going to now be bare metal, just so we don't have any rust. The color honestly does not matter because it's going to end up behind our trim pieces, so no one will literally ever see it. So guys, starting over here on the bumper, again, you wouldn't need to remove the metal end cap. I'm just doing it because I like the look of the short, narrow bumper. So if you were just doing the bezel or the trim piece here, there are 2 plastic rivets that we're going to need to get under, pop them loose. Use a screwdriver, use a trim tool, use a pair of wire cutters, something to, again, get under the heads of these, break them off, and then we will be able to get that trim off. But I first am going to get this metal end cap off. I'm sure most of you know, but in case you don't, these obviously unbolt. We've got a handful of those T45 Torx. We've got 3 on the top. We've got 2 here at the back. We've got 3 along the bottom. And then per the owner's manual, you can loosen this center one on the top and bottom, and that allows that to kind of spread open a little bit so you can get it off, hopefully a little bit nicer without scratching. So guys, like I said, I'm probably just gonna throw a quick time lapse of me yanking this thing off, and then we'll be down to our plastic trim. All right guys, so like we talked about, we now need to get those 2 plastic rivets off of this trim. Again, whether you are putting a screwdriver, a flat blade screwdriver under, giving the thing a twist, you're gonna kind of have to bend, work with it there, or oftentimes it works good if you use a pair of wire cutters. You can get under it and just roll the head right off the thing. So now that we have the 2 plastic rivets off, we are going to need to remove the trim panel. Now guys, luckily we don't really need to care how nicely we pull the trim panel off, because we are taking the big ridiculous trim and throwing it away for our smaller trim. But there are 4 clips on the back side of this thing that have little plastic tangs that it's kind of impossible to get to release the tab. So you just are kind of pulling on this thing. The clips are either going to break, tear, or they might just come off. This one, they all kind of came off decently. Some of them are kind of torn. But again, we are throwing this away and putting a different one on, so it really doesn't matter. So grabbing it from the outside, and again, giving it a good pull, and just like that, we've got the trim off. And again, this could go back on because even though we were pulling really hard, we didn't break any of those clips. All right guys, so now we are down to the part we have to cut off of your brand new vehicle. This is the extended crush can for the, again, crash test ratings. It has to be so far in front of that winch cable there at the front. So this was my other side that I already did so I could show you guys the process, but we are going to need to cut the whole end of the thing off. I will show you guys a little bit closer here, but we've got a weld all the way around that we are basically going to cut on the front side of that weld, and then that will allow us to remove the cap, enough clearance to get our plastic normal trim piece back on this thing. All right guys, so you can even see where this extended cap is welded onto the factory sized piece. Now guys, the other way to do this would be ordering the factory crush cans for a non-winch Jeep. You would need to pull the bumper off, take the bumper apart, and then you could swap that out. Again, that requires another part. Not that it's probably too outrageously expensive, but the fact that you can just cut the piece off, get down to the factory crush can, I am fine with it. It is back to how it would be if this Jeep was not equipped with a winch. So 2 ways to do it. This is the quick, fast, and dirty method. But again, if you want to do it right, then you could buy the new cans, and you'll probably need to watch a different video for bumper removal, teardown, and reassembly. But back to the fast and dirty method, you can see that I cut, just a little bit higher or more forward than the weld there. And basically what we're getting to is needing to cut pretty much nearer the weld and then grind it a little bit closer to where the end cap is. Again, we'll see that once I get that off there. All right, guys, I'm gonna throw you on the time lapse with me throwing some sparks with this thing, cutting our end cap off, and then probably grinding it down, and then I'll obviously show you guys where we're at. Now, definitely grab yourself a blanket, a tarp, something, and drape over the front end of your new vehicle so you are not throwing hot sparks on your paint, on your trim, plastic. All of that's not going to love sparks very much. All right, guys, so now that we've got our first rough cut, now you can see the factory can that is ending right there where they weld on that cap. Now, to be honest, you could probably leave this thing as it is right now, spray a little paint, do some touch-up, literally put anything on there to prevent this bare metal from rusting, because this cut does not need to be clean at all. All of this is going to be covered up with our new trim piece. So again, it really doesn't matter how nice or not you cut this piece off, because it's going to be covered up at the end of the day. Now, guys, of course, I'm going to go a little bit extra. I'm going to take the grinder and I'm going to try to grind that thing down really nice and smooth. Again, going to spray some paint on there. Again, we've got some masked off areas, but make sure you mask everything off here so you don't have your overspray. Again, it does not need to be a perfect paint job even, because all of this gets covered up. So take your time, grind it down. Again, if you're using a Sawzall, I would be extremely careful as that Sawzall blade is moving, that you don't scratch, gouge, tear up any of your bumper finish here. Most of this does stick considerably farther forward than the bumper, so you're going to be safe. But again, just be very, very mindful of that Sawzall blade as that thing is waving around like they sometimes do, just to make sure you don't get into the trim and scratch up your nice metal bumper. All right, guys, so now that I've got mine ground all the way flat and smooth like I'd like, I'm going to get my very custom paint mask set up here, which is a packing blanket, wadded up, covering up everywhere in the close vicinity. And then again, I've got my black spray paint here. And again, this does not need to be pretty. Nobody's ever going to see it. All we're doing is covering up the bare metal. All right, guys, so here's what we are left with now that we have the end cap cut off. We've ground it nice and smooth if you want to. We've shot some paint on there. Again, doesn't matter how horrible your paint job is, doesn't matter if there's runs, it is all getting covered up with the trim. So we are ready to install this. This is going to install just the same as the old one ripped off. We've got the 4 clips and the 2 plastic rivets here on the end. Now these trim panels are different left and right. So if you need to make, sure you are putting the correct one on the correct side. If you look on the back of your trim panel, it'll have the big long part number, and then the last 2 letters are, on this case, RH for right hand or LH for left hand. So once we know we've got our right hand trim panel going on the right side of our Jeep, we're going to get this thing set into place. And just like that, we've got it installed. Now, guys, last but not least, we've got our plastic rivets. Now, if you've never used a plastic rivet tool, it works just like a metal rivet, but they are in fact plastic. This is a very inexpensive plastic rivet tool from Harbor Freight. I've been using this thing for 15 years at work, and it has never let me down. It is identical to the much more expensive Snap-on and everything else. They are all made by the same people. Go to Harbor Freight, buy you one. It even comes with a whole bunch of plastic rivets, and they work amazing. So we are going to get our 2 plastic rivets lined up. We're going to push in all the way on our trim panel, squeeze the pieces together. And just like that, we're done. So guys, in a very short amount of time, you can have your factory winch JL going from kind of goofy looking with big, huge plastic bumper caps to normal looking with the very normal, every other single Rubicon that's ever been produced with metal bumper in cap here, or crush can cap, whatever you want to call it, the fog light bezel. Again, I will have the part numbers for those two down in the description. And yeah, a little bit of work, and yes, you do have to cut your brand new vehicle, but again, those pieces are replaceable. That is the crush can bumper piece. So if you truly wanted to do it the other way, you could pull the bumper off and replace them versus cutting them. But you guys saw it's pretty easy if you've got a few tools and a little bit of time and some paint and some trim and some plastic rivets. So I'm super happy with my now very normal looking stubby Rubicon bumper on the JL, and now we'll have a little bit more tire clearance off-road, and we've got a normal looking front end on this thing. So guys, thank you for coming out into the garage with me today and doing a JL mod on our new JL here, and hopefully this helps you guys out. If you have a very unfortunate looking long-toothed JL winch bumper on your vehicle, you can now fix it for very inexpensive and a little bit of time out in the garage. So, as always guys, thank you so much for watching, and we'll catch you guys next time.